got him. We got Keith right now. So why don't we go to him? Keith, who does a masterful job covering the team for the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I always suggest everybody just check out. You get all his work. His Twitter handle at Pompey on Sixers, and of course, Inquirer.com. That's Keith Pompey, who covers the Sixers. Keith, thanks, man. Appreciate you. I know there was some technical stuff. Thanks for hustling and getting on with us, man. We do appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that too.
That's all right, dude.
No.
Hey, Keith, you need to give me some kind of medication, man, because after what I just heard Morey said, I'm sicker now than I was after watching that Game 7. I was enjoying vacation on the West Coast watching Game 7. I was sick on Sunday. I'm even sicker today after what Morey said in front of the media.
Yeah.
But you're closer to the situation. So you're going to have to call me off the ledge today, because right now I'm about to jump off the ledge for this team.
I didn't like what I heard. I mean, I watched it as well. You know what I mean? Of course, but I didn't like it. You know, I felt like questions. There really wasn't a lot of accountability. I mean, it seems to me that, you know, like the question was, well, if he would have won one more game, would he have been there? And the answer was yes. But then it seems like, you know, Joel's upset. And then, you know, I love Chris Haynes, a dear friend of mine. But he comes out with this report as the press conference is coming on. So it looks like Doc was let go because of James. I mean, they want to keep James, and they want to give him that money. And James is saying, I want to be able to play the way I want to play. Well, right now, Joel was the first option. Joel was the guy who did things, and Doc wanted Joel to be the first option. So it looks like, and then Daryl said something, we want to get a coach who basically, you know, can fit, who mends well, like who meshes with a player. I'm paraphrasing. And it seems like you want somebody that's going to allow James to do the things that James wants to do. So that's what the move was about.
Keith, so I agree with everything you just said. I mean, if we're reading the tea leaves, and Chris Haynes, who I trust is reporting just like you do, is saying he's going to decline the player option, look for a 4-year deal, but also part of what Keith reported was he wants the freedom to get back to being him. He's not able to be him again. If him again is Houston Harden, that's not there. And if Daryl Morey can't see that, this franchise is in big trouble, Keith. I mean, big trouble. And if you're going to give him 4 years till he's 38, what the heck is that going to look like?
Yeah, and see, the thing is, we got to realize the thing that really, I guess, where he thinks this is because of, let's face it, he scored 45 points when Joel wasn't there. Then the other game he scored to 42, and it's kind of like, well, look, I can go back and I can be to who I am. But you're right. It's kind of like, you know, the lift isn't there anymore. The shot is inconsistent. You know, it's kind of like the way that Doc Rivers had him playing is the best way for him right now. You know what I mean? Like, I hate to say it, there's always somebody, you go out to be a superstar, but then you lose it. But can you adjust to being a quality role player, a secondary or third option? But yeah, you're right. He wants to do that. And it just seems to me that it just looks like that they're doing all these moves to cater to him to make sure that he can be that guy. And it's like, hey, let's face it. I mean, they don't want to hear this, but I mean, we talked about this a year ago, that this was Houston East, Rockets East. And that's why I keep thinking, you know, and another thing that I heard that really made me think that they already know who they want is when they said we're going to take a long process. Well, if you are afraid that the great coaches are going to go, you're going to try to like have some sense of urgency in hiring it. But if you hiring a person, but if you already know who you're going to get, and they already know who you're going to get, then you can take time to make it seem like it's a long, drawn-out process.
Keith, let me ask you this, man. Harden basically said his relationship with Doc after that Game 7 was, it's okay. See, that was a red flag for me right there, number one. Number two, was James Harden restricted in any way when he put up 45 points in Game 1 and 42 points in Game 4? Now, when the Sixers won in 3 games, the man shot 61%. In the 4 games they lost, he shot 21.8%, 12 of 55, 3 of 11 the last game. And I think in a desperate situation, especially when it started to unravel early in that second half for the Sixers, your Bombers got to start bombing to keep up with Boston's Bombers. So I don't understand where this restriction comes from. I want to be me. I got to be me. Dude, you're a team player. First of all, you've had to expand your game because of age, and you did it well in terms of being a facilitator as well as that scorer. You had the freedom to do both well. So what is this excuse that I need to be me? What, you mean you just want to shoot whenever and just forget about the other 4 guys on the court? Is that it? That's not how it works.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the one thing that we got from it is the 45 came when Joel wasn't on the floor.
Oh.
I mean, that's it. That's what it is.
Yep.
The 45 came when Joel wasn't on the floor. The ball was flowing. Everything was right and growing. I mean, but, you got to, that's with everything that you're saying is correct. Like, yeah. I mean, let's face it. What happened is, we kept talking about how bad a coaching job the Boston Celtics coach was doing. Well, he realized that, okay, if we take away the pick and roll the way they want to run it, then Joel's going to have to be in the perimeter. Well, what that does is that means everybody else has to adjust their game too. And he couldn't get a shot after that. Talking about James, he was struggling because he couldn't maneuver the way that he wanted to. So you're right. It's tough, but I don't know, man. I really don't have the answers for this one because I understand what everybody wants to be great. Everybody wants to get paid, get money. But to be honest with you, James Harden has all the leverage in this situation.
Wow.
Because I mean, think about it. They just fired the coach, right? The Houston Rockets are saying that they're going to go strong after James. So let's just say if the Sixers now we all agree that giving James maybe 4 years at a max deal is not a really good idea for the back end or whatever, right? From what we saw. But if James Harden walks, now you didn't fire the coach, and James Harden walks, and we know what they are cap wise and everything like that, who you going to get? Like, they don't have a point guard. Like, he's not a real point guard. He's a combo guard who can handle. So who's going to be the point guard? And so I think all this stuff is factoring in. And James is like saying, look, this is what I want. If y'all want to keep me, this is what you do. If not, I'm going to Houston. So he kind of has him over the barrel a little bit.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, Keith. This feels like it could be heading towards Mike D'Antoni. And I can't even believe I'm saying that.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
If we're catering to James Harden, I mean, who better?
And yeah, exactly. Because see, here's the thing: people forget this, y'all. And I was like reporting it, but it was like 3 years ago. Mike D'Antoni was the coach. He was going to be the coach before Doc Rivers. Like, the thing that happened is, like, remember, it was like him and Ty Lue were the finalists.
Yes.
But they did everything in there. Like, I mean, they rolled out the red carpet for D'Antoni. At that point, Embiid gave it his blessing. Everybody said, they were going to like do 5 out. They were going to do the whole 9. And from what I heard is it got to a point where Mike wanted more money. He wanted more money. Jeez. So then all of a sudden, Ty Lue comes in for an interview. And I guess you do that to put some fear into him. Like, hey, look, we could go another direction. It just so happened Doc Rivers gets fired. And then all of a sudden we hear about Doc. You hear about, Doc Rivers is great coach. Then all of a sudden he becomes the preferred candidate. So when we talk about Mike D'Antoni becoming the coach, you got to factor in that he was their choice before Doc became available. He was the guy that they wanted. And now that you have James here and all these other things, and you have Daryl here, it's kind of sort of like, all right, we might as well just slide him in there, especially when they're saying that at that particular time, he was the guy that Joel wanted to play for. So they're all looking at it like, Joel may not be now, but everybody else is looking at it like this is a win-win. This is a win-win situation.
All right, Keith, I need you to break this down for me. This statement, it just resonates in my ears right now from Maury. We have a roster ready to win Daryl Morey. Break that down, pro or con or both, please.
It's not a roster ready to win. I mean, like, well, here's the thing. Like, I will say this: if James Harden and Joel Embiid play at the best at their capability, they would have defeated the Boston Celtics, and then you would have said, okay, yeah. But when I look at this roster and a lot of the guys that he went out there and picked up weren't really in the playoff rotation, right? Yeah. Right. That's the one. So you got Melton was in there. You have House was in there like part-time, PJ Tucker, but it's kind of like the rest of them. They were just sitting the bench, watching. But when you look at Joel Embiid and James Harden, like they were extremely inconsistent. These are two guys who struggle in the postseason. Right. They're known for that. So yeah, maybe you can say that now, but I don't think is 100% true. But also you can look at it and say, look, I brought in these good dudes and they all were going to help us, but it's not my fault that the coach didn't play him, but for whoever it was, I just don't think that Doc had a lot of faith in some of these guys that, Daryl brought in.
Keith, I got to ask you, just step away from Doc for 1 second. I'm left unable to answer how Embiid and Harden can come up as small as they did the last 5 minutes of Game 6, and then what happened in Game 7. That's the one I don't know how there's any how you justify that if you're them, if you're Morey, if you're the organization. How? I mean, it would be one thing if you went down swinging and you just lost to a better Boston team. Okay, it sucks, but it is what it is. They didn't. They didn't give their max effort.
Nah, they didn't. Here's the thing. And the one thing I'll say about Embiid, now Embiid is a little bit, frustration. It could be being unfortunate, but he did mess his knee up, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of those things. And there was times where, he was running down the court, blocking shots, doing whatever. I think Embiid ran out of gas. If you just want to say that, I think he did. And I think he may have got a little frustrated, a little tired because the way they were defending him, because they did take him off the block, so to speak, right? They did. They took him off the block. The thing about Harden, to me, it was mind-boggling just because, he had 2 days rest from Game 6 and 7. So you kind of thought that with that, he would come out a little bit better. In the first half, he was horrible. I mean, he had more air balls, 3, than made shots. Like more air ball than made shots. And it looked like he just was going through the motions, and I didn't see it. I mean, and the funny part about it is, like, when we talk about explain it, apparently this is kind of sort of like who he has a reputation of becoming. Because before there was another reporter, a national guy who I have the utmost respect for. He says, well, how you feeling about this one? And I said, you know what? I kind of think the Sixers are going to win. I kind of think that James is going to have a big game. And he says, oh, so you're not familiar with Game 7, James? And I'm like, huh? And he was like, you do know that he has a reputation of coming up small in Game 7s. And I was like, yeah, but this is going to be different, right? I'm thinking that. And at halftime, he said, what did I tell you about Game 7, James? So apparently this is his reputation, and a lot of people nationally were not surprised by his poor performance.
Keith, do you think that if Doc had gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals, even if they got swept by Miami, that he would still be here today? Because the organization, based on what Morey just said to the media, to me, the organization would have said, well, we finally broke that curse of not getting past the second round, and we're moving in the right direction. We got us one step closer to our ultimate goal, which is to get to the NBA Finals. Do you think Doc would have still been here?
Yeah, I think he would have. Now, the thing is, if they would have got swept, maybe not, right?
Okay.
But I think you would have. See, because the thing is, you would have looked at it. I think Doc is the easy excuse. Now, again, there are some in-game adjustments that Doc wasn't good at, right? I mean, there was times. I mean, let's pull it. Let's be honest. But I think that when you look at it and you say, "Wow, Doc Rivers, his coaching he had the third best regular season, record. The Sixers had the third best record in the NBA over his 3 years here. Joel Embiid became MVP finals 2 years in a row and then wins it the third year.
Right.
Look at how Doc made him become a better player. And then you'll say, you know what? Doc Rivers led this team out of the second round for the first time since 2001. So it's kind of like you have to give him some credit. But when he loses, it's easy to say Doc Rivers lost 10th straight closeout game in the second round. Doc Rivers' 33 losses in closeout games are the worst in NBA history. So it's easy for you to put all the blame on him. But then if he wins it, then you have to give him his flowers, as the kids like to say, now. But if he loses, it's easy to say he's the problem. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, yeah.
So Keith, it seems like they're pretty hamstrung here cap wise. Like it doesn't feel like there's a lot of moves. And I guess this is where Daryl Morey's got to prove to everybody that he's the genius everybody seems to think he is. But like, how do you get out of this thing, man? How do you get them better? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's tough. Because when we look at it, I don't know what the correct word is, but like with trading draft picks, you have to, first of all, they don't have a pick. And then to trade a pick, I think they may have to wait to 2029 to do that. But you would think that, the best option, which would be, is to unload try to see if you get unload Tobias Harris, right? Okay. But the problem is it is an expiring contract, right? And so it's so much money to whereas teams might say, well, what you going to give me to get rid to take on that salary? Mm-hmm. Well, it's not like you have any draft picks, right? Now, what you couldn't do is you can say to, like, if you're trying to get rid of, if James says, hey, y'all, I'm not trying to come back here, you can probably say, well, hey, Houston, let's work out a sign and trade, right? Like we can get some young players, we get a draft pick, we'll get this and that. The only problem with that is Houston has so much cap space available and all this other stuff that they may say, kick rocks, why we want to help you out?
Yeah, like we don't need
just
sweepers.
Get them free.
Right,
yeah, we're not helping you out. We're not getting anything out of it. Right. So, I think they're kind of stuck right about now, man. And maybe they know that and they realize that. And that's why, and James knows that and realized that. And that's why he has so much power, because if you take James Harden like off this roster now, as much as he struggled, if you take him off this roster, who are you going to tell me is going to be the facilitator that's getting everybody else involved?
True.
They don't have any draft picks. Like, who can you get? And as good as Maxey is, that's not Maxey's role. He can't, that's not his job. His role is being the third best scorer, getting out in space and getting easy buckets and getting transition threes. But as far as him being a guy who can set all his teammates up, his game hasn't evolved to that yet. And I don't know if it's going to be able to evolve to that by the start of next season. So James,
yeah, he knows all this.
He knows all that.
Wow. All right, so Keith, Doc is the fourth coach relieved of his duties this offseason. Mm-hmm. And the numbers I want to bring up are numbers that you are well versed in, but for those in our chat who are not. 16 straight winning seasons as a head coach. He loses for the 10th time in a game 7, including 5 in a row. 9th straight time he's failed to reach a conference final. When you look at all the movement going on this offseason, do you think Doc is going to be behind the bench this fall somewhere else as a head coach, or do you think he's going to sit back, take a year off, and maybe reevaluate his situation?
I think he'll be behind the bench somewhere.
Okay.
I do. I think, if there's a knock on Doc Rivers, the question is, how can he coach? Like, I think he has a tough time coaching superstars, like mega stars, like unless they got to have a certain personality. Like, I think in Boston, they had that personality. Like, you got to be able to be self-led and stuff like that. And you got to have extremely high basketball IQ. I'm not saying Joel and them don't, but I think that you need somebody like a Kevin Garnett, like I'm coming at you type of dude, right? But I think that Doc Rivers, there's a charisma with him. I mean, he's like, he's the type of guy, he's one of the all-time winningest coaches. There are going to be opportunities like Toronto, for instance. I think like he could be a candidate and someone in play for that one. They're going to be a good team. Right now, they don't have a lot of superstars, so you don't have to deal with the egos. I mean, I think that one of Doc Rivers' best coaching jobs this year was when Maxey was out, James Harden was out, and Joel was out. He took that squad and they did some magical things.
Yes,
so
they did.
And then the Clippers, when they had Tobias Harris in them, they didn't have any megastars. Like Tobias was traded that year, but that team went on and played in the playoffs. So when you look at it, he can get the job done. It's just that the problem is, I think that he's so much more of a motivator. He gets guys to do this and that. He can draw plays out of like, coming out of timeouts. But his big weakness is a lot of his coaching on the fly, making adjustments and things like that. And those are the things that you have to win a championship, unless you have really strong elite players. So I think that there's a place for him. It's just that, he just may not be able to, win a chip without the right players.
Last one from me, Keith. Do you think, because I get asked this all the time, I don't think he's going to come back, but do you think they'll at least reach out to Jay Wright and inquire to see if he'd be interested?
I don't think Jay Wright. I think Jay Wright has some inside knowledge, some stuff, and I don't think this is the right spot for him. You know what I mean? Like, let's think about this. Doc Rivers is going to the Hall of Fame. Now, you might say that he doesn't like, he has his flaws, but he's still going to end up at the Hall of Fame. Well, he's no longer the coach here. Brett Brown, came through the process. He did some things. I mean, he's not the coach here. I think that Jay Wright is a great coach. Mm-hmm. He developed players who went on to the pros and who are phenomenal. And look at the Knicks. Look at these guys. Now, the thing is one of those things where I don't know if Jay Wright can put up with the modern day NBA player.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you're in college, you got to be at practice at 3:00. You got to do this, you got to do that, or whatever time it is. It's no negotiating. And I feel like in the pros, at least some of these elite players have too much power and they dictate what goes on. And I don't know if Jay Wright can adjust to that or want to.
Keith, last question for me. If you could handpick, if you were given carte blanche to handpick the Sixers' next head coach, who would you want to see in here?
That's a great question, man, because it's weird. Like, but I would think that my two leaders of the people that they have, names that were mentioned, would be Monty Williams.
Okay.
Right. And then all the other one would probably be Nick Nurse. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? It would be those two. But you know what I say? But you know what? The one guy, I think though, if you said that I'm gonna get a veteran guy, a veteran assistant coach, I would give Sam Cassell a chance. And the reason why I'm saying that is because he already knows what he's getting himself into. He was here. Yeah, you know what I mean? And he's the type of guy that a lot of these dudes respect. You know what I mean? Like Joel, all the players respect him. But I also think that he would have to have a great staff. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you look at Ime Udoka, you look at these other guys, they were assistants that no one really gave a chance to. Brad Stevens was a college coach. But what you do is you pair them with a veteran guy who knows the ins and outs, and next thing you know, they're taking teams to the championship. So, so I would give him an opportunity. But if it was somebody who had head coaching experience, Monty and Nick Nurse would be my two.
Okay. All right.
Keith, thanks, man. Appreciate
you, bro.
We always
appreciate
appreciate you giving us a couple minutes. Thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me on, fellas.
Yeah,
Pleasure.
man. Be good. Have a good
Thank
day,
you very
bro.
much. That's Keith
Bye.
Pompey from the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at Pompey on Sixers. Of course, he's the beat writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can find all his work there as well. All right, we appreciate that. All right, Gunnar, good coverage there on the Sixers stuff. When we come back, we will get to the Eagles schedule that we meant to get to a little bit earlier, but we said so much going on. We will get to it, so don't go anywhere. That's Derek Gunn. I'm Rob Ellis. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. All right, let me tell you about our good friends at Pro Action Restoration. Yeah, you have a home, you have a business, you have a property you own. You go through the pain, the inconvenience of water, fire, smoke, mold damage, you name it. It could be a really trying time. You're not sure who to turn to. Well, I got the people to turn to. It's Pro Action Restoration because they're on call 24 hours, 7 days a week. I can tell you that from personal experience because I reached out to them on a Saturday. They got right out to my parents' house. They fixed the problem. The crew was professional. The price was right. Couldn't have been a better experience. They are licensed, bonded, fully insured. They've been serving the tri-state area for more than 2 decades. Pro Action Restoration will work in conjunction with your insurance company. So again, it could be water, it could be fire, it could be smoke damage, mold remediation. You name it, they can handle it. Give them a call, 610-623-3760. That's 610-623-3760 or online at Pro Action Restoration.